Hi there, I'm Nick, a former Amazon bar raiser, and in this video, I will show you how to ask great questions in your Amazon interview loop. A lot of candidates either don't take advantage to ask questions of the interviewers or waste the final minutes in their interviews asking safe questions such as, what's the team culture like, or what's my 90-day plan going to look like? Today, I'll show you how to flip the script and ask questions that will make people remember you. I'll do this in two parts. Part one is I'll show you how to ask great interview questions as a candidate. And part two is I'll share with you 15 specific battle-tested cultural questions that you can ask in the Amazon interview and make people remember you because of those questions. All right, let's start with part one and the strategy that you can use to get ready with your interview questions ahead of time. I will first cover three components that you need to be mindful of when you prepare and ask interview questions. Element or component number one is you should prepare at least 2 questions per interviewer in your loop. Meaning that if you're interviewed by a team of 5 people, you should get ready with at least 10 questions ahead of time. Part 2 or element 2 is that you should research every interviewer ahead of time and ideally try to tailor your questions for that interviewer as much as possible. Some Amazon teams are going to let you know who your interviewers are. Other teams are going to hide that information from you, attempting to shield those interviewers from overzealous candidates like you who would do their research ahead of time. And part 3 that you should keep in mind when you get ready with your interview questions is that you should not ask puffball, soft questions. You should not try to be too deferential to your interviewer. Instead, you should ask punchy and courageous questions that are not provocative. You're not trying to pick a fight, but you are trying to show your interviewer that you are courageous and you stand out from the rest of the candidates that they may have spoken with. With that in mind, there are 2 methods with which you can prepare your questions, and I'll describe each of them separately. Method number 1 is you can cut your questions into cultural ones and functional ones. Cultural questions reveal the team dynamics. Those are questions such as, what's something here that's been broken and nobody has had the courage to fix? Or what are the top 3 decisions that you've made as an Amazonian to help you sit in this chair across from me and ask me all these questions as an interviewer? I'll share with you 15 specific cultural questions later in the second part of this video. And then there's functional questions as well. Functional questions show the team your functional curiosity in the products and services that they're building. So the best way to prepare functional questions ahead of time would be to study the press releases for the products that this team is making and turn the information you get from these press releases into specific questions. For example, if you're interviewing with AWS, you can prepare a functional question like, why is AWS struggling in China? So I would suggest out of the total number of questions you will prepare for your loop, 20 questions, let's say, half of them are cultural and the other half are functional. All right, now let's talk about the second method with which you can cut your questions and prepare your questions for your loop. That second method is to have prepared questions versus on-the-fly questions. Prepared questions, I've already talked about. Those are the cultural and functional questions you'll prepare ahead of time. On-the-fly or on-the-spot questions are questions that you glean from the information that the interviewers share with you during their conversation with you. In each interview, you will have to describe yourself briefly to each interviewer. They're likely to start the interview with a tell me about yourself question, and you'll tell them about yourself in 2 or 3 minutes. Now, each interviewer will also describe what they do to you, usually before they even start asking you the questions. When they jump on the call, they'll tell you their name, their team, and they will likely give you a short overview of their Amazon career so far or of their current responsibility. So it's your job to take that information and turn it into a question. It's incredibly powerful. And what's even more powerful is if you take the information that one of the interviewers gives you and turn that into a question that you ask to a different interviewer later on in the loop. That shows that you can connect the dots. In terms of the mix between prepared and on-the-spot questions, I would again say try to shoot for 50% prepared and 50% on-the-spot questions. So you can see that there's a matrix forming with 50% being functional questions, 50% being cultural questions, and then also 50% are questions that you've prepared ahead of time, and 50% are questions that you glean on the spot, on the fly, with information that your interviewers share with you about themselves. Okay, now let's move to part 2 of this video, which is me sharing specific, punchy, battle-tested cultural questions that you can ask your interviewers during your Amazon interview loop. Question 1 is, what's the real reason this position is open now? The answer to this question would give you a sense of the political dynamics on the team. It would show you maybe that the team's growing and they're getting new headcount, or that the position has been frozen for a while and now they've gotten the approval to continue forward with a new project or whatnot. Question number 2 is, what will make this hire fail regardless of their skill set? This shows you what are some icebergs that you should be mindful of, things that you can't see with the naked eye. It also shows you how united the team is. What this means is that you may succeed in your specific role and with your specific responsibilities, but if the team in general fails, you will fail as well as a part of that team. Question 3 is, what surprised the last person who took this role? The answer to this question would tell you about the difference between the pitch and the reality of this role. Question 4 is, who will gain the most if I succeed and who may be threatened by my success? The answer to this question shows you who the stakeholders are, if there's any politics going on between them, and who you should align with and who you should convince to kind of stay out of your way in order for you to be successful. Some of these questions, I understand the interviewers might not want to give you open answers to, but even if they don't give you the full answer, they would give you a part of the truth, and also they would be again impressed by your courage to ask such punchy questions. Question 5 is, what's a tough call that I will need to make in my first 90 days on the job? This reveals the pressure points that you'll face on this job and on this team. Question 6 is, when the last crisis hit, what did the leadership team do right and what did they do wrong? You want to know how flexible and how capable your leadership team is, and you want to know how that leadership team manages crises. Question 7 is, what is the most important thing that I'll need to protect? Ideally, the answer to this question should be something along the lines of Amazon's leadership principles, things like customer obsession, high quality, so on and so forth. But you also want to know if there are any sacred cows or things that don't meet the eye. Question 8 is, what's broken but nobody has had the courage to fix? This shows you the resistance to change, the friction, and the inertia on the team to the extent that there's any. Question 9 is, who has the power here without even having a formal title? This shows you the difference between the org chart and the influence chart, people who have dotted line reporting structure to others, or people who are just strong influencers and leaders without being so in the org structure. That's important to know because at Amazon, it's not an unheard of thing for a higher level person to report to a lower level person, depending on the specific project. So you want to know where the real lines of power lie on that team. Question 10 is, when the last time someone said no to our leadership team, what happened to them? With this question, you want to find out how open your leadership is to dissent and if there's any personality cults going on that team. Again, your interviewer might not be frank maybe and too upfront discussing such sensitive topics, but you want to, if you have the courage to, put those out in the open and leave a good impression. Question 11 is, if I underperform in this role, what would likely be the cause? You want to know what are the known and potentially unknown reasons because of which you can fail. Amazon has a terminology here that goes, dogs that don't bark. What are some of the perils that we know of and that we don't know of that may trip our success, and you want to flag those, or at least ask for those in your interview. Question 12 is, what is true about this team that wouldn't show up in onboarding? Again, you want to see the difference between pitch and reality, and you want to find out what are some of the intangibles on that team. Frequently, when you interview with Amazon, they would ask you to relocate. They would ask you to abandon a job where you've been successful so far for something which you don't know of. And asking questions like that would potentially put your mind at ease. Question 13 is, what does success in this role not look like? So you want to know the no set of things that you shouldn't do, in addition to the yes set, the things that you must do. And you want to prevent yourself from making prior mistakes and missteps similar to what other people on the team may have committed to in the past. Question 14 is, who are the top 3 internal stakeholders who I must win early? Again, with this question, you want to find out what are the power dynamics, who are the influencers on the team, and who will be in your corner, and who you want to be in your corner in order to be successful. And question 15, maybe the most important question, is what would make you say 12 months from now that hiring me was the best decision you've made? By asking this question, you want to find out what is the final outcome that you're shooting for. What are your final KPIs that would determine your success? Also, this is a good question to ask even after you've been hired, and find out what would it take to promote you, along the lines of, hey, imagine if I were for promotion today and I had my promotion document in front of you, what would make you say yes, and what would make you say no to me being promoted right now? So you want to work backwards from what your final destination is and ask that question and be very clear what success looks like, and not just what success looks like, but what standout success looks like. All right, that's it. All I had for today. Now that you know how to prepare great interview questions for your Amazon interview as a candidate, and now that I've shared with you 15 specific cultural questions that you can learn from and use in your interview, you're ready for the next step. And that next step is to watch this video here, where I will share with you 13 specific leadership principle questions in the Amazon interview, and I will role play for you how to answer those questions. Watch this video here next, and I'll see you there soon. Bye.